Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet on Wednesday the 21st of May 2025 from the County Council Chamber. The time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. It's very important to us that meetings are held in public and viewable online, and our normal location for this meeting, which is the Walton Suite in the Guildhall, is not available because it's being used for the inspection of our local plan. And so we're here in the county today because this is the cheapest and most practical way to be broadcasting our meeting, and it remains always very important to us not only to be public but to be careful in our use of public money. Before we begin the formal business, a few housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out online. Can everyone ensure that mobile phones are on silent, and can I remind members to use their microphones? Should the fire alarm sound, County Council staff will assist and direct us to the muster point, which is in the courtyard outside the Great Hall, located to the left as we exit this building. Can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting this morning? We will invite you forward when it is time for you to make your contribution. Turning to the agenda, the first item is apologies for absence. We have no apologies for absence. The second item is disclosures of interest, and I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of items 9, 10 and 11 due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I need to declare the same interest. I have an additional role at Hampshire County Council, but there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, so I have a dispensation granted by Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other declarations of interest? I can't see any. The next item is requests from councillors to speak. I have a request from Councillor Lee on items 8 and 9, 10 and 11, and from Councillor Horrell on items 8 and 9. The next item after that is public participation. Mr. Tate, you wish to, do you wish to speak on this or on a particular, now or on a particular item? I think it's now, isn't it? So please.
If I could work out how to, I'd like to speak now, Councillor Todd. Oh. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address Cabinet. I wish to raise what I feel is my very serious concerns about the Council's proposal for the dilapidated coach house behind 59 Colebrook Street. Members may recall that back in November 23, you agreed to spend £610,000 to refurbish 59 to provide 8 beds HMO for Afghans and Ukrainians. I question the sense of spending such a large sum of money for just 8 bedrooms, but Councillor Ernie said that the building was an integral part of the Council's estate and that the building shouldn't be sold, hence why it was being refurbished. After that Cabinet meeting, there was a planning application approved, the refurbishment undertaken, the building is empty to this day. Why have you sanctioned the new planning application without the support of a thorough financial appraisal? This is a case of the cart before the horse. The existing coach house is in such a terrible state that structural engineers suggest it should be demolished rather than refurbished. I guess you've actually looked at it. I have. The cost to do this work will be extremely high, as we know with refurbishments, and a financial appraisal, I suggest, would immediately conclude that it's not viable unless you can get grant funding. Unlike 59 Colebrook Street, the coach house is intended for temporary housing for local vulnerable people, not refugees and their associated local authority housing fund grants. Have you actually looked at the plans? The proposal is for a 2-bed dwelling, yet it fails to comply with the government's national minimum space standards, which require a 2-bed, three-person dwelling over 2 stories to be at least 70 square metres, not the 60 proposed. The second bedroom is appalling. 4.5 square metres. The minimum standard is 7.5 square metres. What's the point of having a higher threshold in your local plan if you're disregarding it, as you did with the corner house? And I've pointed that out to you. The planning application makes no sense whatsoever other than its attempt to sort out a building attached to the Guildhall, which has been negligently neglected for many years. Back in 21, I questioned what the council was doing with 16 Tower Street, an empty council property for 4 years. You achieved your planning permission, realised it was unviable, and you sold it. You sold it for $418,000. 3 doors down, an identical property, 6 months later, sold for £540,000. I have to question the leadership here of these critical assets and whether local residents are paying a high price for some really inappropriate and badly calculated decision. Thank you for the opportunity to address Cabinet.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tate, for your comments. Councillor Reach, I believe, do you have some clarification to offer?
I do, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Tate. I've been around 59 Colebrook Street, and I'm very proud of what the council have achieved there. I think the rooms are excellent quality and excellent standard, and we've brought back a heritage asset into use. It's very well located, right in the city centre, right next to all of the services one would expect, right next to the high street. I think it's a really good example of what we can do. We expect to have tenants in there very, very soon. There were some minor snagging works that need to be done just before that's the case, but I'm told it'll be very, very imminent. We'll have people moving in. As for the room at the back, the scheme was delivered, as for the coach house, so the building to the back of 59 Colebrook Street, the original scheme was delivered under budget. There was some money left over. It was prudent and sensible to look at that space at the back and to look at the building, which I agree is in a dilapidated state, but it's something that we can do some good work with. And I think all of my points I make about the wider scheme at 59 Colebrook Street also apply to the room at the back. It's right by council services, it's right on the high street, and I think it'll be a fantastic facility when we get round, subject to planning permission, to get that redeveloped and put back into use.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Reach, and I think that point that the refurbishment of 59 Colebrook Street Coach House is being covered within the original budget is a particularly important one. The next item to cover on the agenda is the appointment of Cabinet members and to allocate responsibilities for 2025-26. This confirms the announcement that I made to Council on the 14th of May. So to confirm, Councillor Cutler will be Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation. Councillor Lerney will be Cabinet Member for Climate and Nature Emergency. Councillor Thompson will be the Cabinet Member for Business and Culture. Councillor Porter will be the Cabinet Member for Place and the Local Plan. Councillor Becker will be the Cabinet Member for Healthy Communities. Councillor Reach will be the Cabinet Member for Good Homes, and Councillor Cremoyson will be the Cabinet Member for Recycling and Public Protection. The next item of business is the minutes of the previous meeting held on March the 13th and March the 20th. Cabinet, are you happy to agree those minutes as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move on to Leader and Cabinet announcements. I'm going to save my announcement until the end of this section. Councillor Becker.
Hiding under there somewhere. Thank you. It's that time of the... Oh, I'm sitting down. No. It's muscle memory.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to announce that we are once again offering half-term football coaching for children across the district for only £1 a session. These sessions will be run at Stanmore, at River Park, Holden Common and at Whiteley, so a really great opportunity for children to attend, to make new friends and to learn new skills. So The booking details are all available on the council website, and we do urge parents to book as quickly as possible because these sessions do fill every half term. I also am extremely pleased to announce that groundbreaking works are due to begin shortly at River Park for the brand new pavilion, and the preparation works have begun this week with the site set up currently underway. It's amazing to see work begin at this site. The old facility was very well used and loved, but certainly of its time, and was no longer fit for purpose. I think everyone knows it's been an incredibly long road to get here, so seeing the building team on site is very, very welcome. This pavilion is going to welcome so many different users. Cricket players, rugby players, park runners will all benefit from the new facility, making it a hub of activity. It's an accessible building, it's contemporary, and it's going to look beautiful. This redevelopment reaffirms the council's commitment to support our residents to live active and healthier lives, whilst helping to remove barriers for women in sport and those living with disabilities. It also offers a new community space in the heart of our beautiful River Park, so we're extremely, extremely happy to see those works commence. And I'm also very happy to announce that the redevelopment of the toilets at Abbey Gardens is now complete. I urge everyone to go and have a look. We've done a cabinet visit. They are beautiful. They smell lovely, which is a certain improvement on how they were before. They really do look like beautiful professional toilets that you would be very, very happy to take any visiting family members to. So go and have a look. And a sniff.
Thank you very much indeed, and I had a very excited phone call from the British Toilet Association, who were absolutely delighted at the news. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to announce a national first for the Council. Working in collaboration with Scottish and Southern Electricity and Advanced Infrastructure Technology Limited, we are using their Lensa tool to create a digital local area energy plan for the district, which will be the first of its kind in the country to be developed in this way. The local area energy plan will help the district become greener, faster, by identifying the most cost-effective route to decarbonise our energy use and helping communities to bring forward their own local energy schemes. This work will provide a detailed picture of future energy needs in the Winchester district, putting us in a great place to receive outside investment to strengthen and decarbonise the local grid, supporting the use of green energy to power and heat our homes, vehicles and workplaces. More information about this will be given at our Carbon Neutrality Open Forum this evening, which has a focus on energy and will include updates on renewable and community energy from across the district.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lerney. And Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I've got 3 announcements to make, and the first is around the Local Visitor Economy Partnership, the LVEP. I'm absolutely delighted to announce that the City Council, working with Hampshire County Council and Portsmouth and Southampton City Councils, have gained LVEP accreditation from Visit England, following a submission made on our behalf by Tourism South East. One of 40 LVEPs nationally, it will pave the way for a continued strategic approach to develop and grow the visitor economy across the county. This milestone is a great opportunity to elevate the Winchester District's visitor economy, collaborating with local businesses, the National Park and stakeholders to drive sustainable growth with the potential to attract new investment, create jobs and showcase the rich experiences our area has to offer. So I'm really delighted that the LVEP is joining us up with our neighbours in Portsmouth, Southampton and the rest of Hampshire. Together, we have a fantastic offer to people in the rest of the country and around the world. My next announcement is on a GEDS Sustainable Business Engagement film. GEDS, the Green Economic Development Strategy. Over the last 2 years, we have helped over 40 businesses become more sustainable and reduce their carbon emissions by over 100 tonnes a year. This supports our carbon neutral objectives for the district and our green economic development strategy. This film showcases the projects we have undertaken with business. It also serves as a call to action to all businesses across the district to contact us to see how we can work in partnership with them to continue to embed sustainable practices and drive down carbon emissions. The Support for Sustainable Businesses film is available to view in the Take Action section of our climate emergency pages on our website. And my final announcement is regarding the Shared Prosperity Fund 2025 to 26. In 2022, Winchester District was awarded almost 1.75 million to spend on local investment through both the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund. At the close of the 3-year funding period, we had successfully invested in around 60 projects. And again, you can find some of the case studies on the website if you wish. This year, the district has been awarded a further 327,000 for UK Shared Prosperity Fund projects and 223,500 for rural projects. Applications for these funds close on the 27th of May and the 11th of June, respectively. We are encouraging applications for awards ranging from £25,000 to £50,000. Applications must align with both the national agenda and the Council's local objectives of tackling the climate emergency and creating a greener district, vibrant local authority, local economy and living well. There is more information about how to apply to the Shared Prosperity Fund if you go to our website, and you'll find that under the business section and the Shared Prosperity Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I have a couple of announcements. The first is that we have received feedback on the regional proposal for local government reorganisation from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. The feedback received speaks for itself, but the main item of particular impact is that they have not given us an extended deadline to respond to the consultation. I met with leaders from across Hampshire and the Solent on Monday to agree the way forward to hit that the original date, including the way forward for active engagement with residents and stakeholders on the plans as they emerge. The second announcement relates to devolution. In 15 minutes' time, the leaders of councils across Hampshire, and I would stress it's all leaders of all councils across Hampshire and the Solent, are due to get a briefing from the upper tier local authorities, Hampshire, Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight, on the details of their plan to have a combined authority ready for implementation in April 2026. I'm due to be chairing that meeting, so at this point I will need to apologise to you all that I have to leave the meeting, go back to the Guildhall and sit in front of Teams in order to chair that particular meeting. But I will be reporting back through Cabinet and Council on the progress on that and member briefings as needed as we proceed from here. And with that, I'm afraid I need to leave you because I'm due in another meeting, which I'm also meant to be chairing. But I'll hand over to Neil, who will run the meeting from this point onwards.
Wrong button. Right, we will move on to agenda item, just get myself organised, 8, which is the housing procurement of HRA repairs and maintenance. Okay. Compliance activities contracts. Councillor Reach to introduce the paper, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. The paper we have before us today relates to housing procurement, the procurement of HR repairs and maintenance and compliance activities contracts. This paper is further to a paper that was brought to Cabinet in November by 2024, which is reference CAB 3463. Since that time, there have been two major changes in the context. The first is what Councillor Todd has just left to go and work on, which is local government reorganisation, which potentially will lead to, well, we all know about the amalgamation of local authorities, some of whom have their own HRAs and their own contracts of this nature. The second change is the establishment of the social housing regulator and the increased focus on customer satisfaction and quality of service. So the time is right to just reassess whether the original approach was something we should continue with or this alternative. So today I'm seeking approval for the recommendations of this alternative. Specifically, we will change the core term of the contract. So the contract itself will be shorter. This provides passive provision for potential amalgamation with other local authorities, potential retender, with a core term of 4 years and a potential extension of 3 years after that. So this should mean, should local government reorganisation go ahead as we expect and on the terms that Councillor Todd's thrashing out right now, we ought to be able to get a more efficient contract, better for tenants and so on and so forth. Furthermore, the proposal before you is for a contract that will be let on the basis of a schedule of rates, which is a change from the current proposal of cost of repair. This should give us enhanced cost control and efficiency and clarity of how much our repairs will cost. The compliance tender, which is separate, which will be offered via framework contracts, that should give us enhanced control over our compliance work, which is an area of focus of the social housing regulator and something that we need to know we need to do well on. There'll be a technical change to the procurement approach. I'm sure officers can answer any questions about, but that will be done under the new Procurement Act 2023 rather than the previous competitive dialogue. Which should provide for a shorter and more efficient tender process. And we expect a go-live date of August of 2026. A few specifics before we take some questions. The voices of tenants and leaseholders will be really key to get this right. There are 2 rounds of consultation that we're planned to do with our leaseholders, the first being in July and August, and the second being in February of 2026. There will be some staff affected potentially, because of course with the change of supplier, there could be certain TUPE considerations and the like. So we make sure that staff and trade unions will be consulted as appropriate. And furthermore, I think the whole point of what we're trying to achieve here is to make sure that we have contracts which deliver value for money for the council, but most importantly, make sure that tenants get the quality of service they expect. And that we get a focus on the really important compliance activities, which we know the social housing regulator are very, very keen for us to demonstrate enhanced performance on. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Reach. We have 2 councillors registered to speak, and we also have Gillian Knight and Paul Woodham here to answer any detailed questions. I think Councillor Reach has given an excellent introduction, given that it's his first day as Cabinet Member for Housing. Councillor Horrell.
Chair, thank you. It's rather strange sitting down at these microphones. I sympathise, Councillor Becker. Chair, thank you for allowing me to address Cabinet this morning on this very important issue. It is indeed a positive move to split the procurement of the HRA repairs and maintenance contracts into smaller lots and for shorter periods, as previously recommended by some of us when we had the original debate. We know from tenant comments that the current satisfaction levels with our repairs contract is less than desirable. I therefore question why we are basing the evaluation model on 60% quality and 40% cost. Would it not be better to increase the quality percentage to 70% to ensure the service is much improved. Although clearly tenants will need to agree to this, and as it may make the provision more expensive, I'd be interested to know whether this has been considered given where we are currently with the tenant's view of the service. How are we assessing the important concept of social value in the contract negotiations? In my view, an important element, mentioned as 10% in the contract offer. However, no further detail is available in the paper. Ongoing consultation for one of the Council's most important and expensive contracts will be key, given the impact on the lives of our many tenants. Councillor Reach, you have indicated 2 sessions of consultation will take place. How will this be actioned as we move forward against what is a relatively aggressive timetable? In paragraph 4.2, you indicate that the existing housing repair staff will be transferred to the new contractor on existing terms and conditions under TUPE. Please, can you explain further who are these staff and what role do they currently play? We plan to ask bidders, have they had any complaints made against them in the last 3 years, which were upheld by the Equality and Human Rights Commission? Can we also ask contractors whether they have had any complaints that they've had made their way to the Ombudsman for work that they have failed to fulfil? We know this is a good measure of reliability. In the financial risk assessment, we indicate that we propose to use the cost model of NFH V8SOR. Please, can you advise what this actually means in the context of the terms of the contract for those of us less familiar with the official terms? We know that our recent judgment by the social housing regulator is a key area of concern and the need for improvement. Is there more, therefore, that we should be doing to ensure that the contract allocated to the company overseeing the compliance activities is able to deal with this situation and has the resources available to help us on this important journey? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. And Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Yes, I appreciate the contextual changes since the Council scoped the procurement approach for our housing repairs and maintenance contract last year. And following our self-referral to the regulator for social housing and the introduction of new performance monitoring standards, clearly it is essential we expedite the procurement of these new contracts to meet the updated consumer standards and safeguard the safety and well-being of our tenants as fast as possible. So really my question is it possible to do it any earlier than August 2026 in view of that? I'd also be grateful for some clarification and comment on a number of concerns that I have. Ensuring value for residents, the Cabinet originally endorsed a price per repair model last year for fairness and risk management. With a shift back to a schedule of rates model, can I ask, how will we ensure this still delivers value for money for our residents? And how will annual spend be accurately forecast and controlled under this pricing approach? My second point is the partnership relationship with the contractor. It was previously agreed that we would enter into a terms alliance contract partnership arrangement rather than a traditional supplier relationship. Is this still our intention? And how will oversight and quality control be maintained, particularly given the contractor will also be managing the IT system for repairs, reporting, and performance monitoring? You've answered, I think, in the paper, my questions about tenant engagement, July, August, February 2026. But can I seek reassurance that the tenants' views will be incorporated going forward to ensure the process continues to be delivered with them and not to them? In terms of the procurement approach and value for money, I do wonder if a more hybrid approach is desirable for the proposed changes. Councillor Horrell has already mentioned the National Housing Federation scheduled rates, which I think is a recognised baseline. But is it sufficient to provide the greater control, flexibility and value for money we require, given our current lack of robust stock condition data? So perhaps a more hybrid approach is required, combining bespoke rate adjustments tailored to our property types, repair history, local market rates, and the performance incentives linked to clear KPIs, completion time, first-time fixed rate, tenant satisfaction, and perhaps a dynamic purchasing system for our non-standard and specialist jobs, ensuring competitive pricing through maybe mini competitions. So I'd be grateful for your views on those aspects. And finally, on the local government reorganisation, clearly I fully understand the contract duration being changed, with extension options to give any future unitary council flexibility, which is pragmatic. But I wonder, does council agree that this creates higher contract costs due to the shorter contract durations? This, I believe, raises general concerns over the potential of additional costs associated with local government reorganisation. Have we fully identified, quantified, and included these for the AHRA in our financial planning? And does Cabinet know what the additional costs are for these contractual LGR considerations since last year's agreed procurement approach? And finally, again, Councillor Horror rightly mentions the evaluation model, but I'd be grateful for your comments on the proposed evaluation model under the Procurement Act 2023. Is it truly optimal? The Act requires contracting authorities to consider not just value for money, but also public benefit, including social and environmental outcomes. I am also therefore concerned that the recommended 60% quality, 40% cost split overlooks this balance. Shouldn't the model instead assess bids across quality, cost, environment, and social value to reflect our responsibilities to residents, the council, and the environment, both carbon emissions and nature? So can I suggest that the Cabinet may wish to consider an adjustment that splits maybe 60% quality, 30% cost, 10% environmental and social value, or similar, thus aligning with our service priorities and climate and nature commitments while ensuring overall best value? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Councillor Reach, if you'd like to attempt to answer some of those questions, and of course we have officers here who may be able to cover some of the more technical issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillors, for your questions. Yes, there's quite a few in there. I'll do my best to rattle through the ones I've got answers to, and Mr. Hendy's just down here, who's happy to answer some of the more technical ones. A question which you both raised was around the assessment criteria, the 60-40 split in the procurement. That's consistent with the Council's policy, paragraph 35 of our procurement strategy. I take your point about quality, and also, Councillor Lee, your question about social value. It's a question I've already asked officers is around that social value isn't an afterthought, that the 10% is actually something meaningful, and that we make sure there's something tangible. So it's definitely something I'll be focusing on to make sure we get quality there. As for cranking up from 60 to 70%, I'm not sure that's something that we could do necessarily. I'll ask the question. It's something that'll be interesting to check. As I say, as we stand, it's consistent with the Council's general procurement approach. As for how the consultation will be carried out, I think it's important to stress within the procurement itself, I've talked about the 2 formal stages of consultation that we plan to do. That's not to say that the other routes of communication we have with tenants and leaseholders will be closed off. The TACT board, for example, will be embedded in this process as well, so we'll have the voice directly there from our residents in the procurement. In terms of the TUPE, I'll ask Mr. Hendy to come to answer that, given that it affects council staff. Do you want to answer that now, Mr. Hendy? I'll have to come back. It's a question about TUPE and who the staff are that are involved.
Thank you, Councillor Veach. So members may be aware at the moment we have staff that we colloquially call the repairs hub. They receive calls from our customers which repairs are logged, and of course they have to engage with the contractor to schedule those repairs. Clearly that's inefficient, that's double handling of information. It would be much more efficient if there was one point of contact between customer and the contractor that's organising the repairs. So what's proposed here is that those staff would TUPE transfer into the contractor, and therefore there's one point of contact for a customer in terms of contacting the organisation that will be scheduling and organising the repairs for them.
Thank you. The further question, Councillor Horrell, was around referrals to the Ombudsman. Again, this isn't something I don't know if we can ask this. It's certainly something I'll pick up with officers of course, kind of egregious breaches of Qualities and Human Rights Commission duties is something that we need to look at, but certainly we can ask about Ombudsman. That's a very fair point. The schedule of rates terms, I understand that is an industry standard document. The purpose of that is to simplify and clarify to any potential tenderers the basis upon which we'll be pricing these repairs. And I'm assured this is something that will be well understood by the industry and people who will be looking for tenders from. I think then your final question was around compliance activities. I think, yes, the social housing regulator, I think, has really brought a really sharp focus on a lot of this stuff, and I think there are areas where we need to improve and areas where we need to look at. This links to a question Councillor Lee had about the expected cost of this, because without a full and clear picture of the quality and the state of our assets, it's difficult then to price that. I'm assured, and I've looked at the budget myself, and I'm confident that over the 30-year business plan for the HRA, that there's the right amount, that there's the right budget in there. Of course, until we get in and actually have a good look and see the state of things, that is always going to be imprecise, and the further out into the future we get, the more imprecise it will be. But I'm happy and I'm confident in the scale of the money that is in there for now. But yes, the focus on compliance will be very high. Moving to Councillor Lee, your questions around value for residents and the price per repair. I think what a point I was making before, the schedule of rates at least gives us clarity. I think that then allows us to make it clearer to residents the kind of standards they can expect. First time fix you raise, that's something that we need to improve on, and these are all things that I think will come back through the various consultation events, and we will continue having this conversation with residents throughout the procurement process. In terms of spend control, I'll refer that to Mr. Hendy, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Was that the question in relation to the relationship with the contractor? Previously, we were suggesting there should be a partnership arrangement because it's a long-term relationship with the contractor. I'll refer to Mr. Woodman in terms of the form of the contract that we'll be offering now, which I think will be different to that partnership arrangement, because clearly there isn't such a long-term commitment from the council to the contractor.
Thank you. Furthermore, you had a question about IT. Obviously, this is something that I'm always very nervous about, new IT systems. I think it's absolutely critical we get that right. It's something that we've heard from tenants that at the moment it perhaps doesn't work fully to as they would expect. This is something that we will look for people in the sector who have expertise in this area to make sure that we're getting it right. And yes, there's an element of buying in a service here. But this is something that, again, we will be a focus to get right. I've answered your question, I think, about tenants' views and how they'll be considered through the process. In terms of flexibility, of course, there's always a trade-off in procurement between flexibility, certainty, value for money and the like. I'm happy that we've got the flexible approach here. Of course, if things were to change, one of the benefits of having the shorter core term is that, in fact, after 4 years, if the world does change and there's some new technology or goodness knows what, we can adjust that approach, and we can certainly work with whatever the new local authority needs to be in terms of a new contract, if that's necessary. I think that was, you then had a further question around local government reorganisation and higher contract costs or the shorter duration. I think, as I said, this is always a balance, and it's about getting that flexibility right. I think the 4 years gives the certainty, the kind of people who might tender for these contracts, while also giving us the opportunity to change as required with local government reform, and also your question about flexibility or changes as we get further out in the future. And then further, I think your final question, which I will pass back to Mr. Hendy, was around whether the Procurement Act 2023 approach is optimal and whether there was something else we can do. So, Simon, do you mind?
Thank you. I'll refer that question and the previous one to Mr. Woodman.
So the first question that Simon referred was regard to the type of contract. The Term Alliance contract is still a favourable approach alongside JCT amended. So they're well-recognised, established terms of contracts that the industry recognise and we recognise as well. So we'll actually determine the the type of contract and what best fits with our procurement strategy once we've completed our discovery piece, which we're in week 4 of a 5-week discovery. The discovery piece of work we're presently doing with our external consultants is really looking into our data to help us inform what the service is currently providing, what of that service still needs to be fit for purpose to move forward, and what part of that service needs to be approved upon. And that will align with our service improvement plan with the regulator, and additionally that will also help inform us the best type of contract that will move forward. So we're not wedded to a particular contract at this stage, but that will be determined as part of the procurement strategy, which we'll identify in the next couple of weeks. The second question, that was was that the evaluation model? The new regs, beg your pardon. So the new regs are the regs. So that's what we have to abide by now, PA 2023. Under the old regs 2015, it gave far less integrity with regard to supplier engagement and also, more importantly, resident focus. And the new regs really focus on ensuring that our residents are properly engaged and that the service which is being delivered is resident driven. That will align us also with the consumer standards for the quality and safety elements of that. Under those regs, we could still do competitive dialogue. The problem with competitive dialogue is it adds circa 6 to 7 months onto the procurement process. So that would mean that if we started tomorrow, after cabinet approval, if we can get SEEK approval, we wouldn't be hitting a go-live date until January 2027. So we would be out without a procured service for 6 or 7 months. The 2-stage open procurement is a really recognised good procedure for us, because actually with what we're doing now, we're splitting the repairs and maintenance and voids services and the compliance. It means that we can go out for best bid rather than getting into competitive dialogue and saying, you know, and then effectively getting into an auction situation, which competitive dialogue can tend to do. So we will be very, very clear in our tender approach with regard to the supply questionnaires. We can ask in that about the ombudsman complaints as well. That will form part of that dialogue. But our tender documents and tender brief will be very specific with regard to our KPIs, our measures, what we're expecting to see, core group meetings, monthly meetings, you know, production meetings. So the open 2-stage tender really provides the service providers their opportunity to come back and tell us exactly what they will do. And the real key for that, for me, is that it's at that stage they really start to highlight the social value elements of, well, of what they can do, what the market's doing. Our incumbent contract is approaching 15 years old. The whole social value elements of contracts has significantly moved on in 15 years, and the market is so much more aware of it now and is far more wedded to it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Well, thank you for those answers. Cabinet, do you have questions on the paper? Are there any questions? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I noticed that you said that voids would be part of the repairs and maintenance one. Is there any specific value to putting it with the repairs and maintenance rather than on its own?
We know we need to improve our performance on voids, and I think there are elements of, if we get the repairs and maintenance right, I think that potentially shortens the amount of time that we have voids. And I think that one area where we need to focus on is properties at the end of tenancies and the state that perhaps some are left in. And so there's a whole basket of things that I think that allows us greater control over. Any comments from officers, please?
Thank you. The benefit with adding the voids in, indeed, and the kitchens and bathrooms planned work, because you've got the synergy there of the trades and the trade skills. Equally, having just a repairs and maintenance contract, it's not that attractive to the market. So to make them attractive by putting in the voids packages and also the kitchens and bathrooms, that will open up the market, and we'll get more tenders back and more interest. But effectively, having the day-to-day responsive repair, the day-to-day repairs and the voids, you will still use the same skills resource. So if you're, as an example, if you were in a void property and you had an emergency and you needed a plumber immediately, you can pull one from the other. So actually you're using, using your best resource rather than having to leave an emergency waiting and backfill the void. So there's some real value in it, and it's a market-tested approach.
Are there any other questions from Cabinet? I have one, which is Councillor Lee raised the issue about the compliance contracts not, or could they come sooner given the importance of compliance? Can you reassure us that compliance is happening now and we're virtually there with compliance, but this is the ongoing maintenance of compliance and having a better system? I think it's really important to be clear about that.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. So you'll probably be aware that we are required to respond to the improvement plan with the social housing regulator, and specifically around the safety and quality consumer standard, and the rating that we received focused on our ability to demonstrate that our customers' homes were safe, and the large part of that is the compliance activity, and we have an action plan which we are progressing, and we're pleased to say that we're on track with the majority of that compliance activity in terms of the assessment work. That, of course, generates remedial actions that we need to follow up on a risk-based priority basis. And again, we're addressing that over the next couple of months. And we meet with the social housing regulator on a monthly basis to demonstrate our progress against that compliance activity.
Thank you, Mr. Hendy. Debate. Any Cabinet members wish to speak in debate? Councillor Porter.
Personally, I welcome the shorter contract period and the separation of the two contracts. I think I'm really reassured by the comment about voids, because I'm very conscious that the public see a void as, particularly if they're also a council house tenant, they see it as a waste of money. So I think it's really important to have that response. I'm really grateful for that. But it is useful for us all to be cognizant of still providing an excellent service to our tenants and to our council, at the same time as being cognizant of the likely changes in 27 or 28 or 29, wherever it happens to be. So I think this is a very sensible move for this contract. Thank you.
Any further debate? Councillor Reach, would you like to sum up?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Lots of questions. It's clearly something that people are very interested and passionate about. I would just stress that as this goes on, I'm, of course, always happy to meet members. I think every single ward where we have property in, perhaps not St Paul, but certainly most across the district. I also we'll organise a member briefing as well, so hopefully members will feel like they have a chance to contribute and hear the latest. And just to stress that this is about making sure that the quality of services is high and the standard our residents expect. One thing Councillor Lee raised was about KPI and monitoring this. The next paper will talk about some of the KPIs. Again, always happy to have a conversation about KPIs and how we could better keep an eye on how this is progressing. But I think in summary, I think what we have before us is the right balance between price, quality, contract length. We've heard some positive comments about how the market we expect will respond to this revised approach. So I think it just leaves me to read out the recommendations. Is that for you to do that? Fine. So I think in summary, I think we've got this right, and the balance is correct between those things I've just mentioned. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reach. We'll then move to the recommendations. Cabinet is asked to agree a PA 2023 two-stage procurement process for a 4+3 contract is tendered for repairs and maintenance, voids, kitchens, bathrooms, and decarbonisation. That the contract for gas and electric test inspections and to include replacement to be procured via compliant and competitive procurement routes, a 4+3 year contract, to procure via frameworks for compliance activities to include the following: A, asbestos services, B, heating services, C, electrical services, D, fire safety, E, water hygiene. And the fourth recommendation is that the evaluation models are based on 60% quality and 40% cost to ensure best value for residents of the council. Cabinet, are these recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the review of the key performance indicators. I will get to the paper. We have undertaken a review of the key strategic performance indicators, which are reported via the quarterly reports, the performance monitoring reports. Members were asked to submit any ideas that they felt important on KPIs, and a couple of submissions were received from Councillor Wallace and Lee. There was a further meeting. The Scrutiny Committee was very keen to discuss aspects of the key performance indicators, and there was a meeting on the 14th of April, I think, where Councillor Bolton brought a few more suggestions. The importance of the review was to align KPIs with the new council plan, and the proposed KPIs included in this paper would be used for the first Q1 report, as I say, which aligns with the new council plan. I think both Councillor Horrell and Councillor Lee wish to speak on this. So, Councillor Lee, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and thank you to you and the officers for allowing myself and Councillor Wallace to have the opportunity to contribute to the KPI inputs, but somewhat disappointed that all our suggestions weren't taken forward. And I suggest that there's an opportunity for some further work to develop these metrics and maybe add some additional metrics. But the baseline that you've got at the moment, I think, is a good start. I think we've already mentioned the Procurement Act, and I'm just wondering whether there are some missing ingredients that focus on public benefit, environmental and social outcomes with respect to that. One of the big concerns that I have is there's no measures for biodiversity. There are some limited measures for decarbonisation, digital infrastructure, economic growth, antisocial behaviour, social value, EDI outcomes and health inequalities. And I have done some analysis, and I won't go through them all, it'll bore us all, but I'll just pick out a few, and I'll send this, if you're happy, to Mr. Howson and yourself. So, for example, I think it's quite easy, I would have thought, to add a KPI for area of land under biodiversity net gain or nature recovery projects. It fits with our nature emergency, our local plan ambitions, and the data I'm pretty certain is there. It's just a case of how you pull it. And then the other aspect in terms of decarbonisation, the number of EV charge points installed, maybe public and by this council. I think this is coherent with Winchester Movement Strategy, and where maybe Hampshire's falling short, and the levy EVCP enablers for decarbonisation. I think there's something there which we could easily get at. And then we have discussed at full council a question about climate adaptation assessments and what needs to be done. There was a commitment to do that, so I'm disappointed this hasn't been picked up on, but I don't think it's difficult to do. I think it would be easy to create a KPI which will show intent. I think this fits with social housing regulator stock assessments, perhaps, and repair maintenance process in terms of maybe climate adaptation assessments for council assets. Then moving on to health communities, number of improved green-blue community spaces and facilities delivered. We picked up on blue economy, blue community spaces in the council plan. I'm not seeing that coming through, and I'm sure there is a way to get a metric for that. Thriving places is one of my topics, which unfortunately has now been triggered to speak about again. I attended a BT presentation about the copper wire line switch off, and frankly, I was underwhelmed. And I think there's a subtle telecom speak issue between gigabit broadband coverage, percentage of premises, versus availability. The subtleties of that, I think, can be used to strengthen a KPI. After all, why wouldn't we want our residents, when the 2-hour battery packs provided by BT or whoever run out, to allow and ensure we understand where blue light services can be got at. And then the number of new low-carbon green jobs created in the district. Yes, we've got the employment KPI, but I just wonder whether there's something more that can be done there. And then maybe good homes for all, in part of our new housing strategy, percentage of new homes delivered that are affordable, and I'm sure there's a metric we could derive. I mean, I could go on, but that just gives you some flavour of what I think are some opportunities, so I hope Cabinet might consider a way forward for that as we move forward to deliver our council plan for 2025 to 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Horrell.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak again this morning. Rather like Councillor Lee, I think we believe that there has been some element of disquiet amongst some other councillors about the recent meeting that was held to discuss the performance indicators and the status of the paper that's being presented today. The view is that the presentation of the strategic performance indicators at this Cabinet meeting for a decision is probably premature. There is a view that still more work to be done and follow-up outstanding from officers before this can be agreed in full, or if you're minded to do so today, at least a recognition that we need to come back to some elements. In particular, a number of economic indicators already available from other sources, and we've had other cost-effective measures have not been considered for this review. Councillor Bolton, I understand, and was mentioned earlier, proposed some indicators at the meeting that was held, followed by an email to be considered for inclusion, but these have not been answered. He was under the impression that officers would come back to him for further discussion, but so far that hasn't occurred. So I think in overall terms for the economic indicators, it remains a disappointment that we don't have sufficient tracking of economic activity in the district. Now, it may be that we don't want to duplicate on reporting and that measures collected by other bodies, such as the BID, might also be made available as an opportunity to assess how we're doing in certain contexts. The indicators are very focused on certain aspects of the plan, and in our view, perhaps other areas in the new council plan don't have sufficient depth. In particular, I wanted to make a comment about the social housing regulator's full suite of KPIs. Again, I don't think there's a need to double up on reporting, but that set of KPIs, as we've recently found with our assessment by the regulator, should be something that we all well understand and are up to speed on, And again, how might we make sure that those other sources of KPIs are made available within the context of the scrutiny discussion? So, Chair, I'm hoping that this is still something that can be reviewed. And may I be bold to suggest that the next scrutiny committee should have this as an agenda item to make sure that these elements are actually squared away with those who have considered some alternatives with yourself and other members of Cabinet, and that we then have a suite of KPIs, maybe from not only our own sources but other sources, that help us to understand how we are truly performing as a council in that broader context. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell, for your comments as well. To address some elements of it, of your questions, Councillor Lee's question, particularly on KPIs for biodiversity, we are, and for the nature emergency and broader, greener, faster KPIs, we are happy to undertake further exploration of that, and I think Councillor Lerney would have a comment on that. So.
Thank you. We are continuing to investigate potential KPIs that will help us measure greening and biodiversity across the district, but we do need to get the balance right between spending all our time and resource investigating and monitoring rather than taking action. Modern IT tools do make it much easier to report some measures, such as tree cover over a large area. However, anyone who's been involved in planning and the biodiversity requirements attached to new developments will, I think, realise just how much detailed on-the-ground work and assessment is needed, even over a relatively small area, to properly understand what is already on the ground, and extensive monitoring needed to assess whether the promised biodiversity net gain is actually being achieved. This work is moving forward alongside Hampshire County Council's local nature recovery strategy, which is currently out for consultation until the 23rd of June, and will feed into our own nature improvement plan, which will replace the biodiversity action plan, be broader in scope, and will have KPIs attached to that. There is a member briefing next week on the local nature recovery strategy, where there will be an opportunity to ask further questions about this.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. I mean, in terms of the range of indicators that... Oh, sorry. That's right. We'll wait till you finish talking. Yes, I was just going to continue answering the two visiting councillors. Yes, I recognise your comment that Councillor Bolton had talked about economic indicators that are possibly available elsewhere. I think that the real question that we need to define is last year we produced a more concise quarterly monitoring report, and what we need to do is get the correct balance of the indicators that come in that are the strategic KPIs that we bring into these reports. And I think it is for scrutiny to discuss areas that they may feel are underreported. And I'm happy that if scrutiny have areas that they wish to look at closely, but it is down to the scrutiny committee to choose to do that, and it's not for me to tell them which areas, although there is one particular area that I would like to see if we can develop further indicators, and that is on planning enforcement. I think that would be very useful, and it's something that perhaps Councillor Porter would have a comment on. But broadly, we are happy for scrutiny to look at the suite that we have now and make suggestions for either an in-depth analysis of existing information that may not be needed to be reported in every quarterly report, but as with the process that we took with fly tipping last year, we recognised that there was or there were additional KPIs that would be useful within the plan. I mean, what is also important, I think, is the new quarterly reports have a strong element of narrative statement. And again, I think from the Scrutiny Committee's point of view, it is a matter of whether they see this as sufficient or whether the bias, well, perhaps not bias is perhaps not the correct word, but Councillor Horrell made the point that some aspects of the council plan may be more reported than others. And again, I'd welcome the Scrutiny Committee looking at that. Questions from other Cabinet members?
Well, it's not really a question. It was just to come in on the economic indicators that you've raised. And I would just like to point out that the county do prepare an economic dashboard, and that goes out every quarter and it is published. And from that, the City Council also extrapolate their own dashboard using, obviously, the information contained in the county. And I will obviously bring it up with the local economy team again and see whether there is anything we can do. But again, it's about not duplicating that work, but perhaps informing members of where they might find that information.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Porter?
Thank you. And I was really pleased to have a read of the scrutiny comments. That was really helpful. As Councillor Cutler says, I think I do agree that there should be a KPI on enforcement. We're trying to work that out now. It doesn't always solve everything. You know, we still get problems with fly tipping, we still get problems with enforcement, but it does give a better indicator. And to me, because at the moment, the way the IT system works, unfortunately, it's not very easy for councillors to see the detail. And I think we're all frustrated by that. And it's partly why the transformation process for IT is actually sitting there in planning first. One thing I do want to say is that we had agreed an amount of money this year for enforcement. That's meant that temporary people have been given longer posts, and also enforcement will be in a special focus of my time in 2025. Particularly, we've recruited a staff member who has worked on this with a new approach elsewhere, and she arrives in July, and we'll be able to start that work with her then. Meanwhile, our own staff do spend a considerable amount of time preparing cases to go to court, which take a long time, and we are still very keen to go for prosecution rather than for fixed penalties or and stop notices are very complicated, but we have carried some out recently. So enforcement is definitely something where we need to make sure that the members are involved, but also I particularly like the idea of it going as well to planning committee, as we do with the appeal rates and the other detail that we put out to planning committee. They are really aware of the challenges of planning enforcement, and they can give some really serious scrutiny of that, I think, within their role, because they're so aware of everything that ties up with that. I was also going to raise about affordable homes in planning KPI. Every month I receive the detail of the number of planning permissions that have been given. We know because of council tax how many homes actually become occupied. I want to add in affordable homes to that so that we're completely on board with that every month. And we can certainly see what we can do about putting that certainly into the councillors' awareness, even if it doesn't go to scrutiny, or perhaps scrutiny might like to look at that separately. And in terms of biodiversity, it's a challenge, I have to say. That Councillor Lerner's already spoken about that. I won't go through that again, but it is a real challenge to find a way of reporting that has a value to everybody, and including how we maintain the quality of what we're asking people to do over such a long period of time of 30 years. That's going to be another challenge. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Cromwelson.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. just a question from me at this stage. How often do we update this series of KPIs? You know, is it annual? Is it annual plus intermediate as needed? Just like to get a sense of, you know, how often these things get updated. Thank you.
I don't believe we have a rigid approach to this. There is an element of taking recommendations from the scrutiny committee when beginning the following year. So there's a light touch review probably every year. In this particular case, we have to realign some of the KPIs with the council plan, the new council plan, and that's been this particular process. And I think what's important here is that we adopt a set for reporting, but we recognise that that things move on, that there are areas of interest that develop, and that the scrutiny committee, it is the scrutiny committee's role here to look at performance and to ask the questions. So, as I say, it's not a standardised approach to this, but we need consistent reports through the year, and through any given year, I would suggest. And so I think that's my point about developing and scrutinising some detail, and then maybe coming back for a following year of saying, well, we have worked this through and these are effective, and they may not be reported as formally as part of the report, but we make them available and develop them through the year. So I think this has been a really useful debate in that respect. Are there any other comments that Cabinet members would like to make? In which case, I'll move to the recommendations. And the first recommendation is that the Cabinet adopt the set of attached key performance indicators and they be reported in future quarterly performance reports. And I think it's important that we accept that recommendation so we have the basis for the quarterly reports. The second element, the second recommendation is that Cabinet notes the meeting of scrutiny members on the 14th of April included in Appendix 1. Any further work for additional metrics to be agreed at Cabinet? Could I suggest that we add to there then that the Carbon Board will look at, is that the most appropriate?
No, I don't think it is the Carbon Board. If we're looking at some of these, I think the Cabinet member should be looking at it.
So I'll ask the Cabinet member for climate change to look into the details of where we can report on biodiversity and to work with the Scrutiny Committee on and members on that. I would also suggest that Councillor Porter works with the planning enforcement team to look at whether we can develop further indicators there and ask that the Scrutiny Committee come back to me with further proposals as we can develop them through the year. But I think the important thing is we recommend we adopt a set for now and we continue the process of review to get meaningful information. Councillor Thompson's point about there being a lot of economic information, let's see how we can incorporate it rather than chase or point people in the direction of it. Councillor Porter.
Yes, I also take on board that affordable housing comment from Councillor Lee and Councillor Horrell. I agree, and I think it's important that it comes out in the planning statements so that it, and Councillor Reach and I will work with that to make sure that it comes out in the planning statements so that we're always cognizant of how many affordable houses we are developing as well as our private housing.
Might I suggest as part of the evolution of these KPIs that it's not formally adopted as a KPI for these reports, but that as part of the narrative statement, you incorporate that information as it develops, and then perhaps this time next year we'll be in a position to say, actually, that's been an effective KPI, and we can put it in the report on a regular basis. If you're happy with, Mr. John, are you happy that my somewhat discursive second recommendation goes forward?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Cabinet, you agreed with that approach?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item we're on to item 10, which is the annual appointments to Cabinet. And I've just got to shuffle around bits of paper here. Annual appointments to Cabinet committees. The paper has been circulated. There is very little, most of the recommendations are here. We'll probably be able to agree the paper as a whole. Do we need to read each? I think I could go through each of these Cabinet committees. Cabinet Committee Housing, 3 voting members from Cabinet, and 4 non-voting members. The nominations are Councillor Reach, Becker and Cutler as the Cabinet members. The non-voting members of Councillor Power, Clear, Horrell and White. For the Cabinet Committee Local Plan, recommended 3 voting members and 5 non-voting members. So it will be chaired by Councillor Porter with Councillors Lerney and Todd as the Cabinet members. The non-voting members will be Councillors Brophy, Williams, Rutter, Horrell and Lee. The Cabinet Committee Regeneration.
Sorry, Councillor Cutler, I just wanted to point out that in making those appointments, it would actually be 5 non-voting members for all the Cabinet committees. So I just wanted to make sure that Cabinet was aware of that and were happy with it. So it's a change from the 4 for some of them last year to 5 this year, which is absolutely fine. Cabinet can do that.
No, it's not, because what we have here is we have Housing and Regen have got 4 non-voting members, and Local Plan has 5. We're appointing deputies here, but the deputies are on the sheet, but we don't need to appoint deputies.
Not the deputies, sorry. It's, say, for let's have a look. Cabinet Committee...
I think they're all straightforward, as written.
I've confused myself and now you, so sorry, as you were.
I think we're there. So, where did I get to? We're on Cabinet Committee Regeneration. The 4 voting members are Councillor Todd, Cutler, Lerney and Thompson, with Councillor Todd chairing, and the non-voting members are Councillors Aron, Laming, Godfrey and Lee. They're the 3 Cabinet committees. We move on to the TACT Board. The 2 nominations are Councillor Reach and Councillor Horrell, who are as the constitution of that board. Carbon Neutrality Open Forum does not need nominations because it's fundamentally an open forum that is run by the Cabinet member. The Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Forum has the Cabinet member for ED&I, which is Councillor Becker, the member champion for ED&I, who is Councillor Bennett, we propose as Councillor Bennett. The opposition group, it's a total of 6 members, so we have a further 1 from each political group, which is Councillor Clear, Councillor Langford-Smith and Councillor Bailey-Morgan, plus a further representative of the principal opposition group, who's Councillor Brooke. The Winchester Sport and Leisure Park Advisory Board meeting, Cabinet member for responsibility for that area, which is Councillor Becker, principal opposition group member for sport, who's Councillor Horrell, and 2 relevant ward members, Councillor Aron and Councillor Murphy. The CWR Project Board, 2 cabinet members, Councillor Todd and Councillor Cutler. The Strategic Asset Purchase Scheme is defined and will be Councillor Todd, Cutler, Becker and Thompson. This area is slightly confused by the fact that there is no cabinet member entirely responsible for estates. Councillor Todd is asset management, but Councillor Becker has community assets, so it seems sensible that she should be proposed for that. The Treasury Investment Group, the proposal is as set out here, with Councillor Chamberlain as the other member from the administration of the council from the Audit and Governance Committee. So actually, I think in that particular case, Councillor Lee is not eligible for that position because the principal opposition group member for finance is Councillor Godfrey, I assume still. Kingsbarton Forum, actually the terms of reference say 7 WCC councillors according to the Constitution. So therefore the proposal is that Councillor Cremoyson shall remain chair, Councillor Buffo, Eve, Morris and Porter, along with Councillors Godfrey and Cunningham will make up the 7. West Waterlooville Forum, the proposal is for me as chair, Councillor Chamberlain, Bennett and Langford Smith to make up the 4 WC members, 2 from each ward. And finally, the member champion roles. We are fairly, it's already been raised, the cabinet member to be appointed as lead member for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Councillor Becker. Equality, Diversity and Inclusion member champion, Councillor Bennett is nominated. Sanctuary champion is Councillor Tippett Cooper, and we have 2 nominations for Armed Forces champion, and I propose that Councillor Laming goes forward. Now, I think both Councillor Horrell and Councillor Lee both wanted to speak on this paper. Oh, just Councillor Lee. All right.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I wasn't sure how this was going to go, so you've answered some of my questions. I just want to congratulate all newly appointed cabinet members. I look forward to working with you and officers in this challenging new year. I also just wanted to pick up and say I warmly welcome the pragmatic and sensible decision to retitle the portfolio holder for climate emergency to include nature emergency. It rightly recognises this important interlinked and interdependent nature and climate crisis. And I think it raises the visibility and our ambition for greener, faster and green growth to the appropriate level. And just to very quickly say, obviously the regular carbon neutrality open forums are great, but I look forward to perhaps a new regular nature restoration and protection forum to balance that, a similar approach in terms of the title. And I look forward to working with you all on a productive and successful 2025-26 municipal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, for those kind words. And Cabinet, has anybody any comments to make on these appointments? Any concerns to raise? So therefore, I think we, let me get to the recommendations. So the recommendations of the Cabinet considers the appointments to bodies listed in Appendix A. The list that I read out, which is as set out in the papers that have been distributed, the 2 areas where there would be change were that the Treasury Investment Group, theoretically Councillor Lee, is not appointed, and with the Armed Forces champion, I propose that Councillor Laming remains Armed Forces champion. So the recommendations are set out on the paper cover the whole of that paper. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Let's move to agenda item. Agenda item 11 is council appointments to annual appointments to outside bodies for 25-26. Now there are a range here, and the cabinet addendum which has been circulated includes the nominations from political groups. There are several different sets. The first table being no appointments required at this time. Are you happy if I don't read them all out? Then we have table 2, which is the automatic appointments for relevant cabinet members. Again, I don't propose to read them all. Okay, and then finally we have the table 3. We have the no contest appointments, which are where nominations have been made to the number required. I think it probably would be right for me to read those out. The Carroll Centre Board of Trustees, Councillors Becker and Wise, Councillor Wise as a deputy. Play to the crowd, one observer, which will be Councillor Thompson. Police and crime panel, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Laming as deputy. South East Employers is the chair of audit, so there is no contest there. And Southampton International Airport Consultative Committee, Councillor Lerneys and Councillor Bennett with Pett and Clear as deputy, and Venter Living, 2 company directors. We propose no change there, Councillor Baffa and Pett to continue. The Cabinet is also requested to confirm the appointment of Tim Chow as independent director for the forthcoming year. At this point, I think it would be appropriate if both, because moving on to the contested vacancies, did Councillor Horrell, did you wish to speak?
Chair, thank you. We have put members forward, and I did say last year that it felt a rather unsatisfactory process that we were asked for names, but there clearly wasn't any intention of ever considering some of those. So I'm asking today whether you might consider that there are some other councillors who could add value to some of the organisations that we're looking for representatives to attend, and also to perhaps ask the Democratic Services team in the next year, where we've been nominated historically, if those committees are not meeting or those organisations are not requiring us to attend, that there's some clarity about that going forward. Otherwise, we're simply just, names on a page, but that's no meaning to us as an organisation or to those we're asked to attend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Lee, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Very little to add to that, Deputy Leader. Just to say again, there is interest in the Green Group, and I think they can add value. So it's a question of what the process is to determine the selection. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for your comments. It is a difficult one in these circumstances. And where we have more nominations than vacancies. based on the sort of balance within the council, it's also quite difficult to balance. And perhaps we should look at this in advance in other years, where we actually look at some of these things and say, what are the specific interests that people have? Because at the moment we have names and we don't really know who might have more knowledge than others, so it's quite difficult in this process. So I will go through these, and we have discussed this in Cabinet beforehand. Central Hampshire Road Safety Council, we have 3 nominations. I propose that Councillor Westwood goes forward. Hampshire Cultural Trust, the main trustee is Councillor Thompson as Cabinet member. 1 observer. We have 3 nominations: Councillor Gordon-Smith, Councillor Godfrey and Councillor White. I propose that Councillor Gordon-Smith goes forward with that. The Portsmouth Water Customer Forum. We have 2 nominations, Councillor Brooke and Councillor Wallace. I propose that Councillor Wallace goes forward on that one. River Harbour Management Committee, River Harbour Management Committee. We have a change here that I'd propose that Councillor Power goes forward, and with Councillor Latham as deputy. And Street Reach, we have 1 representative. Councillor Batho's previously been the observer on there, and I propose that Councillor Batho continues at Trinity Winchester. We have 3 representatives and 4 nominations. I propose that Councillor Becker, Tippett Cooper and Horrell go forward to that. Wellbourne Community Forum, I think this is, there is 1 representative, and it's appropriate it comes from the Southwark and Wickham ward, so I propose that Councillor Chamberlain goes forward there. The Winchester Excavations Committee, 1 corporate trustee. Councillor Clear has done this for many years, and I propose that she continues. And for the Winchester Stadium Management Committee, 2 representatives. We have Councillor Becker. 1 must be the Cabinet member with responsibility for support, and I propose that Councillor Clear is the 2nd member. Cabinet, do you have any comments on those proposals or alternatives? In which case, are you happy? Oh, sorry, Councillor Becker.
Just had a question over the River Hamble one. I know, and I'm aware this is a discussion that took place outside of this room, but I understood that Councillor Williams expressed an interest in that one rather.
Councillor Williams is on that as a Hampshire County Councillor member.
Okay, brilliant.
As I understand it. I think one of the points that, and it's something that both opposition councillors have raised, and we've raised it in previous years, about how the reporting back happens as well as the other process. Now, this year we have had reports back from the South Downs National Park representative, which I think, and from the PUSH representatives, but which I think is probably the real key ones. But I think it is important that we find some mechanism to monitor what happens with these other outside bodies, because at the moment there is no reporting back. And I think that would then perhaps make it perhaps a less of a political approach in the future, because at the moment it's very difficult to judge. And we do need to set some judgment on how people perform on those groups representing the council. So the recommendations are we make appointments as I set out, just as I read out on those nominations, the first 4 tables which are uncontested, plus the final one which was as I suggested. Cabinet, are you happy to agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
move on to item 12, to note future items for consideration on the June forward plan. Does anyone have anything they wish to raise? I don't think either of you registered to speak on that, or did you? No. No. Does anyone have any comments they wish to raise on the forward plan? Are we happy to note the forward plan? Noted. Noted. Well, thank you, members, and thank you, Cabinet. I think that that concludes the business. Thank you for those that have come along and spoken.